Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mahamudra for the People. I may repeat that. I guess we are recording, right? Okay, good. So very rocky, weird start. Hello, everybody, again, and welcome to Mahamudra for the People again. Yes, let's see. So we're going to continue with this Doha or Vajrasam by Mahasiddhavarupa. And before we begin, though, perhaps we could take about 12 minutes to sit in meditation. So allow yourself to settle as spaciously and easily as you can, letting your body settle like a mountain with gravity, a sense of immutability, a Vajra-like grounding. Let your breath be natural, relaxed. If you can set your gaze into non-referential space directly in front of you. Let your mind be relaxed and easy. And allow yourself to try to rest beyond the 3 times. So letting go of the past. So letting go of everything that has preceded this particular moment. Letting go of the future. Therefore, letting go of any expectation around what comes next. Letting go of the present having to be a particular thing. Letting go of the need to control. Letting go of needing to figure anything out. And just resting naturally in the stainless purity of your already liberated awareness. Okay. Hello, everybody. So nice to see you all. Okay, so we're continuing from Virupa's Dahakosha. We are in the second portion, which is basically how to tread the path, as it were. And the last stanza, which we ended with, I'll just repeat, just so that there's some sense of continuity. So the last stanza that we left off with was, with realization of the Lama's natural state, mental activity dissolves fast in the reality sphere. In the stream of consciousness, empty of attachment, uncontrived phenomenon freely arise and fall. And so, again, with realization of the Lama's natural state, can mean a lot of things, but really what this is a way of saying is, realization of the Lama state is realization of this, the natural, liberated, spontaneous, creative spaciousness of awareness. And when we're able to rest into this, all mental activity dissolves quickly, right? It dissolves quickly into the direct experience of this. And in the stream of consciousness, or the experience of mind, empty of attachment, uncontrived phenomenon arise and fall, right? And so this experience of uncontrived phenomenon is everything in this screen, included, but then look beyond your screen at whatever is there, right? And this uncontrived phenomenon is all the visual culture, all the auditory culture, olfactory culture, tactile culture, everything that's experienced. Right? It's uncontrived in the sense that when experienced directly, free of elaboration, free of conceptual projection, free of desire, attachment, or, similarly aversion. I'm looking at my shrine, so there's nothing that I feel aversion towards. So this is quite easy. Except maybe my obsession with my shrine. But anyway, the point is that this uncontrived aspect is a direct experience of everything without attachment. And when this happens, experience occurs and just happens, right? It's not a real big deal. So moving on, Virupa says, unbound, but without pride or emotional flaws, respectful, supported by like minds, free of thought streams, without doubt, knowledge and knowing are emptied, and reality itself resumes. And so unbound, meaning, I think I have this right here, like this purba, meant to bind things, so sticking the purba on the ground. Unbound, letting consciousness, letting experience just happen, right? We're not tethering it. We're not tethering it with shamatha. We're not controlling. Right? Without pride or emotional flaws. So without, I, the emptiness meditator, or I, the great Mahamudra yogini or yogi or whomever we think we are. Right, just without that, because why would and that's not even a big deal actually, because this experience, this state is not owned by high beings. It's our natural state, right? This is the most democratic thing there possibly could be, is our Buddha nature, and not just for us humans, but for all beings. Right? Or emotional flaws, which, pride or emotional flaws. So any kind of grandiosity. And similarly, perhaps, I guess we could say, if all of a sudden, this experience of distraction kind of creeps into our experience, then, without a sense of depressed anxiety or, woe is I, the yogi or yogini of space who keeps messing up. respectful, supported by like minds. So we already kind of have this going on, right? Through just being together. Free of thought stream, right? So this is interesting too, because, when we're, in the act of quote unquote performing Mahamudra meditation, right? This key of not controlling is really important. Not controlling, not trying to figure anything out. And, so just letting ourselves rest freely without controlling, without directing, right? Without, and in this particular case, without really kind of getting too wrapped up in shamatha, right? So free of thought streams, without doubt, knowledge and knowing are emptied, and reality itself resumes. And so knowledge and knowing has a lot to do with that which is to be known and a knower, right? And when the easiest way for both of these things to completely fall apart is to rest naturally into the experience of Mahamudra itself, right? Object and subject dissolve. That which is to be known and the knower dissolve, right? There's no, the idea of them begins to loosen or fade. The separateness begins to loosen or fade. The fact that there is an indivisibility, an automatic connectivity between knower and that which is to be known, right? So that you can't even really, there's no dualism, right? When we rest into that, that also begins to dissolve. And so as we are, because this is, how to tread the path, all of this is Virupa's way of saying, be effortless, right? Be relaxed. Don't get really heady. Don't try to control anything. Don't try to control your mind. Sometimes I find these, I feel like it's in the translation of Tapkwatashi Namgyal's Mahamudra book called The Quintessence of Mahamudra, The Quintessence of Mind and Meditation, this big blue book published by Shambhala. In that translation, they use the term modulate, right? So don't modulate, right? So don't shift, don't control, don't analyze, right? All of these things, right? All these don'ts. Some people don't really like that. But anyway, this is the way this is explained. Ignorant of this innate Mahamudra, incessant duality-fed longing will endure. Obfuscating thought will persist. The unerring truth will be hidden. Right? So ignorant of this, right, we get stuck into this dualism, right? This duality-fed longing, right? So and maybe we could say, like, the fastest way to be free of thirst or hunger is to rest into this practice, right? And when I say thirst or hunger, I mean that thirst or hunger for more Dharma, more this, more that, more. I was having lunch with somebody not too long ago who was talking about getting more, maybe going to Asia and receiving more transmissions, more of, receive more lineages and all of this. And they asked me if I was interested, and I said, I'm not, I'm not hungry like that. I'm not thirsty like that. Right. And so there's it took a long time for me to become no longer hungry. So I've got such a big belly. Right. But so this incessant duality fed longing will endure when we fail to recognize the natural state, right? This innate Mahamudra. All of our obfuscating thought will persist. So things like we're talking about Mahamudra here right now. And so, a good example of an obfuscating thought is, well, should I even be here listening to this if I haven't done Nundro? Well, how weirdly ironic that, Virupa is here with his big fat belly, finger up in the sky, holding the sun in place. And he's saying, just rest into the experience of Mahamudra. And then you're like, well, I don't know if I'm qualified. Well, then, you're creating problems for yourself, right? So this obfuscating thought, am I good enough? Am I trained enough? Am I qualified? Am I this? Am I that? And, Virupa's like tapping his fingers on the table, a little frustrated, like, you have it all. Why do you keep asking these, silly questions? Right? So obfuscating thought will persist, and the unerring truth will be hidden. And then he says, and we drift or we spin in samsara, hungry, craving fame and gain, on a graduated path, practicing the Dharma and gaining some insight, achieving blessings, boons, and powers. That is all illusion. Pay it no heed. Right? And so when we're not realizing Mahamudra, we are just drifting this way and that, right? Stuck in samsara, stuck in subject object, stuck in, knower, that which is to be known. Right? Hungry, right? Constantly hungry, unable to just be satisfied with what is. There's a profundity of what it means to be able to just be satisfied, sated. Right? But what are we being sated by? We're being sated by the confidence of what it means to just be, which is a very beautiful thing. Craving fame and gain on a graduated path. So here too, Virupa's like, free your mind. Like, free your mind. This is not step by step by step. This is rest in the Mahamudra. If anything happens like a distraction, naturally return back to Mahamudra. If Mahamudra experience arises, good. But this is not a step-by-step thing. Yes, it's referring to Lamrim. Yeah, so his point here is that this is not necessarily, and again, like I just want to say, I'm not, denigrating the Lamrim path, but here Virupa is very clear that the graduated path is not really what this is. So far be it from me to argue with him. Practicing the Dharma and gaining some insight, achieving blessings, boons, and powers, that is all illusion. Pay it no heed. And so this is interesting. Practicing the Dharma, right? So I'm going to, extrapolate being religious, right? Good religious people, good religious folk. Pat myself on the head, good religious Justin, right? To make sure I make my, donations to the Dharma Empire, and then I get the little pat on the head. I feel good, and come back next week, get another pat on the head. Right, just doing that every Sunday. I don't know. That's not good enough for me. Gaining some insight. So this is another thing. Just practicing in order to gain a little bit of insight. Just get a little bit, and then I'll be on my way. Well, I'll see you in our next life and the life after that, because you'll be stuck. Achieving blessings, boons, and powers. I've never been this kind of person, but I have met people who are like, I'm in it for my poa practice so I can get out of here. So whatever kind of boon or special power, you think you may want, well, it's more than that. This is all an illusion. Pay it no heed. And he says, if we try to objectify and hold on to suchness, we will suffer and fall, spiraling through samsara. Focus on the ground of things, at the essence of mind, and seeing nothing, the mind disengaged, we are free. Right? So it's also not uncommon. Sometimes this happens to me sometimes when I teach, like I'll teach and then I'll receive a litany of messages on the nature of mind. People asking, is the mind like this? Is it like that? Going, just asking these questions. Well, Nagarjuna says this, Longchenpa says that, Maitreya says this, right? And really, like, he's pointing out, like, we can't objectify this. Can't hold on to suchness, right? This kind of stuff doesn't really matter. Well, it's not very sexy, I suppose, to have it not matter, because a lot of people come to Dharma wanting to be able to show off, right? But or to be special, And so he's saying, don't be special, right? Don't objectify. Don't hold on to suchness. Don't be a great, analytic debater of these things. We will suffer and fall, spiraling through samsara if we do this. Focus on the ground of all things, right? Awareness, right? The vastness of mind, the stainlessness of mind, right? Purity of our own mind. Focus on the ground of all things at the essence of mind. And seeing nothing, the mind disengaged, we are free. Right, and so this brings us back to this term, manasikara, which I think is really important from the Mahasiddha Maitreya, of non-engagement. Right, and this doesn't mean isolate the mind, it means just let it go. Sever the strings of reactivity. And when we do, everything just settles. Is this making sense? Is it clear? Yeah, okay.
Would you say that word again?
Clear?
Oh,
I'm just teasing. Which one?
Manasikara.
Oh, Amanasikara. Yeah, Amanasikara. Yeah. Amanasikara. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. If anybody wants to, there's a pretty good introduction in Klaus Dieter Matthe's translation of a lot of Maitreya's works. It's kind of the collection of Maitreya's works called Mahamudra. I think it's called A Fine Blend, like Mahamudra and Madhyamaka. It's a nice book, and I had the chance of meeting Klaus in Bhutan actually in 2022. He's like it was like meeting for me it was like meeting Madonna. He's pretty cool, and it was nice. I think I embarrassed him by making such a big deal out of how much how nice it was to meet him. So Rupa goes on to say, and this next portion is the oral instructions on meditative experience. So he says, in the field of mind's pure nature, no assertion of suchness as this or that can arise. Free of meditation and object of meditation, rest detached, without assertion or negation. So I'm just going to repeat this. In the field of mind's pure nature, no assertion of suchness as this or that can arise. Free of meditation and object of meditation, rest detached without assertion or negation. And so this really can maybe be distilled into just simply rest. Right? Rest without needing to do anything. When we rest directly, naturally, with ease. In the beginning, we may find that our mind is reactive. Right? If it's reactive, just rest beyond that. Which means don't control it, right? Don't try and, quiet the mind down. Don't shush the mind, right? Shh. Don't do that. Just let it play out. Now, often, especially when we begin, it's as if we're fighting a battle, right, against our mind, right? We get frustrated, we get sad. Yeah, how come this isn't working? Why am I so activated all the time? But with practice, one thing that happens is once we are able to settle the mind, it just does that. No, and it's interesting. Maybe I think this is maybe worth considering, like to have a nonviolent relationship to mind and thought, right? Everything that arises, right? So no, we don't need to. So have an ahimsa like approach, right? Of just watching, letting it be, right? Not trying to beat it into a shape, not trying to make it conform to anything, just letting it happen. When we do this, no assertion of suchness or of this and that really arises. There's this stability, this settledness, this ease. Right? When we're able to rest like this, it is a state that's beyond meditation and non-meditation. And so, the term, or it's described as resting naturally without assertion, or non-incarcerating. I like that, Eric. Or without assertion and negation, right? So, like, again, without having to say anything. Now, this I will say to everybody who's older than me. The one thing I'm learning over time is the power and the beauty of just inserting time into most situations, right? A lot of things feel like, oh, we need to decide this now. This needs to happen now. Quick, quick, quick. But the one thing I'm learning is that there's almost nothing that needs to be decided right now. Everything can benefit by inserting space and time. Right? And in this particular way too, with our meditation, just showing up and letting it happen without needing to be obsessed with now. Now, when's it going to happen? I'm in a rush. That's a very New York thing, right? I'm in a rush. I want it yesterday. Just stop it. We may conceive of emptiness, birthlessness, the transcendental. We may identify with the beyond and much else besides. But that is not our natural condition, far from it. Rest with ease, without notions of emptiness and non-emptiness. Again, experiences. I met with someone this morning who, described a litany of incredible experiences that they had. And it was just incredible, just, inspiring. But that was weeks ago. Right? So those were just saved memories. Right? And the heights, such beautiful heights, described in not just Dharma text, but poetry, song, the visual arts, all of that stuff is amazing, right? But we can't live in a manic state forever, right? And so this kind of, obsession with like, oh, it's got no edge, even all the way over there, no center, all this stuff is super great and cosmic and all of that, right? But that's not what it's about, right? It's not about being like all coked up and trying to describe the heights, all the time. Sometimes we might experience that. That's great if it happens, no problem. But if we're constantly trying to just, be in this rainbow dance of, incessant brilliance that just never ends, that says a lot about our expectation. It also says a lot about, our ability to actually be present with, the ordinariness of our practice. It's a rest in ease without notions of emptiness or non-emptiness. So the moment, you're resting in Mahamudra, and then there's a break, and people get into a debate over what was the nature of your experience like, that's just whatever, that's fine. Or you can just right. And so along that lines, Rupa says, let go beyond resting and non-resting, like a zombie without dualistic impulsion. Right. So like the Walking Dead. Right. I just watched a zombie movie actually on an airplane. I was in California for a couple of days last week, and when I was flying back, I decided to not engage in some Dharma thing and watch a zombie movie. And it was great because it pertains now to this Dharma, so now it's justified. But really, to rest like a corpse, right? Freshly dead, no ability to think, no ability to be like, oh, Dharmakaya, oh no, samsara, right? To rest free, completely like this. Right? Let go beyond resting and non-resting. Aware of the reality state, right? Or kind of Dharmadhatu, Dharmakaya, abiding there. Dualistic tendencies will quickly disperse. Distracted, mesmerized by conceptual thought, realization lost, and dualistic tendencies persist. So I find this kind of fascinating because there's a kind of a hidden statement in here about ethics. Sometimes we treat ethics like my glasses, right? So without them, I can't see your faces, right? It's an experience of one taste, I can see things a little far away. I can't see things close. And when I put them on, the glasses of ethics, then I see ethics everywhere, and that's okay, right? Except there's a filter, right? Like it's not authentic, it's not spontaneous, right? So take these off, and then I'm a wild person, no ethics, great yogini, great yogi. Put them on. Oh, now I'm highly structured. Follow the lines. Don't color outside the lines. And what why I'm bringing this up, right, is because when we're able to rest into or abide into reality as it is, in an uncontrived way, i.e., the practice of Mahamudra, dualistic tendencies quickly disperse, right? These habit formations that we're trying to kind of let go of, they just naturally nowhere to go. Right? They vanish, right? So there's no work to be done. Right? So for everybody who's like, I must be better, I must be more pure, I must be more generous, I must be more this, I must be more compassionate, I must center others rather than myself. Right? We can add a lot of stuff, i.e., put on the glasses and think that we need to train like that. Right? But all we need to do is rest into the natural state. Right? And everything settles. This is also, it's said to be very similar for Dzogchen as well. Right? That when arising in relationship to the natural state, everything is able to, all action, all thought, all everything else is able to arise in a way that is naturally compassionate, right? And why is this? It's not magic, right? It's not magical thinking. It's because there's no subject object, right? There's less of, Justin trying to quickly pull the fleece over everyone's eyes so I can look good, feel good, etc. Right? There's less of a need to we could say that there's just a more direct, conceptless experience of ease. And from that place, our actions will be beyond concept and beyond ease, right? We will, in a certain way, you could say that everything that will be done, everything that will be performed will be authentic and appropriate. But distracted, mesmerized by conceptual thought, so mesmerized by the good and the bad, right? Realization is lost and dualistic tendencies persist. So, you know, for the person who thinks they're a hammer, everything is a nail, right? You know that phrase, right? So the person who's obsessed with ethics means that absolutely everything around us is the ground for the testing of ethics, the application of ethics, right? And so what I'm not saying is ethics don't matter. What I am saying is practice Mahamudra and allow all of your relationship to these things to become a little bit more innate and trustworthy based on, the fact that nothing here has a particular essence to begin with. Right? So we're so obsessed with this and that and good and bad and all this, like, of course, we're going to then continue to think and work and project in those terms. When eyesight fails, for example, very good, an eye disease is indicated. When eyesight is bright, there's no need for the optician. When we think we have found the natural state, we have merely become attached to holistic experience. When we attach reference points to the true meaning, our meditation has led us astray. Right? So, when we think we haven't reached the natural state, we have merely become attached to holistic appearance. Right? What does this mean? This means, here we're sitting like, oh, this is the natural state. Label. Make the label, right? Label, you cannot label something that you are in non-dual relationship to, right? You cannot label something when you have or are experiencing this dissolution of subject and object. The moment we're labeling something, we should say, oh, keep going. Keep going until you can't label. Keep going until you can't see anymore, like me. Right? Don't label. Don't label ourselves, don't label others. Or we get attached to a holistic experience, right? I have achieved it. Like, there's no achievement. It just keeps going. Everything keeps going. Appearance just keeps arising. There's no end to appearance. Because, at some point we die, right? So we're in relationship with experience. We are experience. There's no separating both. And then we die. And the whole thing keeps continuing. In that death state, experience is happening, right? There's relative awareness or not of that. And even if there's awareness, we go through that death state, maybe we experience clear light, there's experience of that. And then what happens after that? More experience. Right? But when we become, fixated on an end goal, because even Rigpa, Rigpa as an experience, we could say, oh, that's the end goal. But even then, Rigpa is the constant expanding play of creative experience. It never ends. It never ends. This idea of some kind of Mahamudra heaven it doesn't come from this tradition. When we attach reference points to the true meaning, our meditation has led us astray. Right? Give it up. No, I guess the best thing to say sometimes is, I don't care. I don't care about the reference point. I don't care about the end game. And not because, we're nihilists or just unpleasant people. but because it's beyond concept, it's beyond reference point, it's beyond label. And if that's the case, then why exert all the effort, all the energy of labeling, of trying to ascertain where these declarative statements. Declarative statements are kind of like conquistadors coming and planting flags on some piece of land that was there a millennia before their culture existed. Being like, it's just some fleeting thing. Eventually, a strip mall will be built there. Eventually, that will fall apart. Eventually, the next thing. Eventually, humans will make the world inhabitable, and some other life force will come in. They'll put their flag down. So the next portion is the actual practice. And so this is the third part of the song. Oh, it's described as oral instructions on action, treading the path. It's divided into three parts: the actual practice, the wrong practice, and Mahamudra Samaya. So we'll start off with the actual practice. So the actual practice is as this. Be aware that attachment to pleasure initiates craving and addiction. But hardship is desirable, engendering clarity in the yogini. Right? So the first step is don't cling to that which is desirable. Right? This initiates craving and addiction. Craving meaning I want more stillness, more space. I want more. And again, I was talking a little bit about attachment in the Mirror of Light program on Sunday, because I was thinking about it that morning. It was very good to get away for, a couple days, 3 days, 4 days, with very little to do with the things I obsessively made myself do. But even just being in a different location was nice. And it was really, really great. And then it was really great coming back and then noticing, I feel so different. And then all the reminders came. Oh, I got to do this stuff. Oh, I got Mahamudra for the people on Tuesday. Oh, all the stuff was coming. And all of a sudden I could feel, like a recrystallization of Justin. And that got me thinking about attachment, right? And we think about attachment often, and we think about it as this real tight grasp, a tight grasp to a big vajra, like holding on tight. I'm attached. But it's really, I think on average, our experience of attachment is very, very, it's more subtle. Right? May this experience not, may it last a little longer. It may be a little different. And I think that this lighter strain of attachment is, it's very, very common. So common that I think we don't notice it often. Right? And it's very kind of innocent. Oh, may this meditation session just go a little longer. May this clarity be a little longer. May this experience of insight last. All of these things are a little bit of attachment, right? Little bits. And they have a way of adding up. And so this experience of just, dropping that and letting one thing come the next, come the next. I think the thing that's the most amazing is that freshness of not needing to get involved. Attachment keeps us involved. It keeps us coming back, keeps us trying to control or to direct, even just subtly, all the little ones. Like how amazing to just stop What a luxury. And so the second part of the stanza, but hardship is desirable, engendering clarity in the yogini. Right. And so Virupa's not like, carry the big heavy load on your back. Here you are. Oh. But hardship, this is not easy. And it's not hard. But we need to exert ourselves. We need to apply effort to effortlessness. Just to say we need to just show up. Do not reject negative states. Recognize their value and attend. In adversity lies fulfillment. Just as the whipped horse, just as the whipped horse is encouraged. I don't know if the whipped horse feels encouraged, but we get the point. Right? So do not reject negative states. This one's a good one. There's part of us that loves to reject them, run away. Right? But don't reject. Don't push away. But also don't relate to these things as, oh, here I am, some kind of, penitent here to just be tortured. Recognize their value. So Pating Rinpoche, like one of my most important teachers after my root teacher, told me that for a year he ate just salty foods, and then for a year he just ate sweet foods, and for another year he just ate astringent foods, and for another year he just ate bitter foods. And why I believe him is because he I was writing about this recently for an article for Tricycle, and this part got cut out, so I have to share it with somebody. So, but when I met him, like he gave me and my Dharma brother the text that is the text that kind of spawned my whole relationship with Yang Yoga with Dr. Nita. When I first went, I did about a 9-month or so retreat. He had this kind of hermitage right next to a cave where he spent 40 years in meditation. In Sikkim, right on the border of Bhutan. And so I was there for 9 months. And when I got up there, he was giving us a tour. And one of the things he showed was this wooden box that he had built that he wanted to be. He told us, he was like, when I die, I want to be put in this box. And then, I can achieve rainbow body in it. And, and that will be it. And I've never met anybody besides him who ever had, it was like the level of practitioner who had a box ready for that. And of course, I was with him until the day before he died. A number of years later, I was out in Sikkim and spent the last 2 weeks of his life with him. And I had to fly back to Delhi the morning of the day he died. So he didn't achieve rainbow body in that way. But anyway, I share this because he was really, really fastidious about his practice. I think you could say that he engaged in hardship. He made me engage in hardship. He installed a buzzer in our room. So at 2:30 every morning, we would hear zzz, 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 and you'd have to get up, and then that's when you'd quickly kind of wash your face and then start prostrations. So he made me experience hardship. Right, but the whole why I'm bringing this up is because he went through the thing, all this work of just eating salty foods to find the one taste in that, and then the next year only sweet things. He really wanted to dissect his experience. Right, he recognized their value. In adversity lies fulfillment, right? So in adversity lies release. And Boko Rinpoche once told me, there's very little point in being in a cloistered retreat when you have absolutely all of your needs met. Like, you could do that, and you can have experiences arise, and under those circumstances, most likely good experiences will arise because there's nothing to do, right? There's no, you're not engaging in a lot of work. There's not a lot of hardship, right? He was like, but then often, and he said, I've seen people do this, and he was the retreat master for the Karma Kaju tradition, right? He oversaw the 3-year retreat at Rumtek, at his monastery. There are 2 3-year retreats at Jonggan Kongtrul's place in Lava, and then at Podong in central Sikkim. So he was spent so much time in guiding these 3-year retreats. And he said, I've seen this. People come out of this, and then someone steps on someone's foot or is disrespectful, and people fly off the handle. They're like, do you know who I am? Like, I've done all this meditation. I just did 3-year retreats, and you treat me like this. You're just a newbie. And his point is in engaging difficulty, in an engaging practice, when we experience hardship, right, this is how we really kind of learn how to distill the essence of what is Mahamudra. When everything is spoon-fed, it's really hard to appreciate. Whoever has understanding and realization, but has no practical experience, he has the problem of excellent eyesight, but no real spine. Right? So whoever has the understanding and realization, right, being able to appreciate and rest into the view, right, but no real experience, right? You haven't done the practice. You have this problem of being, you have a certain element of clarity. You could say intellectual clarity, but you have no experience, right? This means these books should just be thrown away, and we should just all spend time meditating. Act out the meaning, unglued from determinancy, and without denial or assertion, without method or goal, without means or end, let spontaneity arise in the moment. Right? So act out the meaning means rest into the view, right? Which is what this practice is, right? The view is that the mind is beyond time, it's beyond space, it's vast, it's primordially pure, it's already done. Right? This is the view, right? This is the essence of what our mind is. So to rest into this without, fixating on that, it's kind of like driving while using some kind of like mapping technology, and when you're highly fixated on the map, you're very aware of how little you have traveled to the goal, right? Whatever the destination is. So it feels a lot longer. Right? When you don't, okay, we're just stay on this road for X period of time and blah, blah, blah. Then when we get to that intersection, we'll figure it out. It goes a little bit more easily, right? So, really to not fixate or focus too much on the view while we're resting into it, right? And the act of resting into the view is, to practice without denial or assertion, without goal or method, without means or end. Let spontaneity arise in the mind. This is another reason why we see these, instructions to practice like a simpleton, or like a fool, or like a corpse, or like a zombie. Right? Don't be too smart. Don't be too analytical. Don't be too concerned about where you're going to end up. Don't be too worried about where you are now. Just let this whole thing play out. Right? And in those moments, because this is not a gradual practice, right, sometimes we will experience great clarity, right, or great insight. And if we can experience that without labeling it or becoming, obsessed with location in relationship to the theoretical end, which is a weird way of thinking, then things can kind of unravel quite beautifully. But the moment we fixate, the moment we, look for this specific location, right, the whole thing falls apart. Right, so be easy, be relaxed, go with the flow. Don't worry. Just show up. Quite a gentle practice. I like to say it's a passive practice. Sometimes people don't like that word. Everybody has an opinion about things. So the wrong practice, this is great because it's just one stanza. Overwhelmed by attachment and craving, we may reject everything or pursue everything. In either case, oh God, I'm sorry, in neither case is that Tantra yoga. It is wrong practice. So attachment and craving, rejecting everything or pursuing everything, having a location, don't have a location. Don't chase. Don't strive. Don't try to achieve anything. And even time, don't be in a rush. Don't be slow. Anytime we're like, I'm going to go real slow because going slow is good. Well, that's the wrong practice. I'm going to go real fast because fast is good. Well, that's the wrong practice. I'm going to reject everything. Wrong practice. I'm going to, control everything. Wrong practice. Don't have, what a luxury, right? It's funny too that, we can, sometimes we might find, and this might be like, a way that we can be very inconsistent. One can espouse all of the kind of benefits of non-binary thinking, non-binary existence, non-binary identity. But we'll sit down in meditation and all of a sudden have a relationship to binary experience, self and other, good and bad, right or wrong, ethical, non-ethical, attachment, aversion, location, non-location. Right? Mahamudra is one of the grooviest practices, right? So in essence, Mahamudra and Hatha Yoga are both about pulling out an eraser and erasing that one point that you think is you. And then when you do that, everything can just be whatever it is. Right? How magnificent. Right? When we erase our own spot, we're also erasing our relationship to all that stuff over there, and that stuff up there, and that stuff down there, and over there, and over there. Because we're essentially removing binary relationship. And so the wrong practice, essentially, is to be overwhelmed by attachment and craving, be overwhelmed by the rejection of things or the pursuit of things. This is the wrong practice. So then we'll move a little bit into the Mahamudra Samaya for a couple minutes, and then you can see if there are any questions. I'll do one stanza here, and then see if there are questions. So for the Mahamudra Samaya, we may have conviction that we're all Buddha, and still we accumulate optimal merit. We are bold and fearless in samsara, and we still avoid the slightest negative act. Right? So what he's saying here is that we may, essentially, we may be practicing this practice of non-duality, right? Moving beyond good and bad, right and wrong, this and that, subject, object, knower and the known. Right? And yet we still work for the good of beings. Right? We're not beyond that, right? We're not causing harm. Right? We're showing up and accumulating merit, not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of others. We are bold and fearless in samsara, and yet we still avoid the slightest negative act. Right? So in this experience of non-duality, we still form this resolve to not engage in negative activity. Why? Because we can't guarantee that others are able to experience things from the perspective of the Mahamudra view. Right? Who here has ever been, I've seen people do this. Well, I practice Mahakala, so I'm going to be a real jerk to you. I practice this high practice and I can just, do whatever I want. I'll say whatever I want because it's all non-dual because I received this from so-and-so in Sikkim and if you were, doing that to a whole room of Mahamudra practitioners, they wouldn't react, right? But unless we can really, 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 we want to really, really, really take full responsibility for the impact of our actions, right? Sometimes it's better to act in a way that will ensure that people don't misunderstand us. Right? And we could even say, without going down the rabbit hole of criticizing Trungpa Rinpoche, but some of his actions may have been unskillful that way, right? That from the standpoint of somebody with, this kind of more, greater realization perhaps, or greater relationship to non-dual experience, this behavior or language or whatever that may have been used was experienced by people who are still stuck in a very kind of binary state, right? Very dualistic state, and either caused some people to justify this kind of behavior as the right kind of behavior, or have been, or who people who were harmed because they didn't have that ability, right? So this is hard. It's like tricky territory, so to speak. Better to be like 16th, was it 16th Karmapa? I'm sorry, Guru Rinpoche, who said, to keep your view as vast as space and your conduct as fine as Tsampa, right? So to keep it, make sure that your conduct isn't going to harm, no matter how out in the world, how out there our practice might be, how sophisticated or secret or powerful or non-dual our experience of mind may be. Because if we go around hurting people, what benefit have we really, accrued? So I want to see if anybody has any questions. No pressure if you don't. Is this feeling clear? Yeah. Yeah, I think the big thing, right, is Bokar Rinpoche once said, during one of his Mahamudra seminars, like, don't be strange. Like, don't get, basically like, don't act strange, don't act crazy, don't get weird. Right? There's nothing more beautiful than practices like Mahamudra and Dzogchen. I think these are kind of, some of the greatest gifts that the Vajrayana tradition, offers to humanity. And these practices are really forms of art in the sense that it takes time and experience and skill to be able to engender a direct experience to awakened mind in a way where we're also able to be skillful, to not hurt people, that maybe it's good to be both bold in your practice personally and then gentle as a practitioner. Yeah, can it?
Thank you for these teachings. I'm thinking about, like to what degree, or I wonder if you just comment on navigating, like making these, like the path part of the Mahamudra teachings personal. Like, I think it feels quite beautiful, talking about sort of relaxing and don't control. And a part of that feels like kind of almost inviting each one of our kind of like human contours, sort of like, and I can see, well, maybe I can see the way that might get confusing if you're also kind of working with, it could get confusing. Yeah, I would love to hear you share a little bit about that.
So it gets confusing in what way?
Well, I was just thinking, like, if you start to kid yourself, like if you start to kind of like there's almost like don't get weird, you start to get weird. But in some ways I'm kind of thinking like, oh, well, one of the things that I've found for myself is that because I really, value bodhicitta and value the path, when I do that and I start getting weird, the feedback gets louder, and then I can kind of hear it more,
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, this is a good and interesting question, and one that there's not a definitive answer for, because this is complicated. I will say, like, for myself, like, I feel very convinced that there are some people that would prefer I wasn't teaching Dharma and wasn't speaking, some of the things that I speak, because it's upsetting to them, right? Because their mind is very rigid around, specific forms of Dharma practice. It should be like this. You're saying it's like that, and that's what the Mahasiddhas say. What gives you permission or the right or blah, blah, blah to say that, right? So on that level of things, like, I vow to always be a pain in the butt to those people, right? Because there's some kind of like, duty in rubbing them the wrong way, right? This is a Samaya activity for me. Like, I will rub those people the wrong way for the length of this existence, or however long that is. And it'll probably be even worse in the next existence. So there's that level of, like, engendering people's feedback, usually completely unsolicited feedback. Right. Then there's a different thing. So there's being weird in that way by saying, like, we're all Buddhists, and, get out of this kind of serf system, that we have in some sanghas, get out from underneath the thumbs of your monastic oppressors. So that might rub some people the wrong way. And that's a little too bad. There's another thing, like directly hurting people, right? Directly causing harm. And so, I mean, the thing is like, I've never really I've met people who have kind of gone off the deep end, I suppose. But again, the like sensitive Mahamudra practitioner or Hatha Yoga practitioner is constantly taking in all the data through awareness. Right? We're taking in data in relationship to experience of self and other, or experience of phenomenon. We're also taking in data with respect to who we are in relationship to. So if somebody says, hey, what you said, it was okay with me, but it really hurt that person over there. That's good to hear. And it's then also good to hear in a Mahamudra Hatha Yoga way, which is to hear, to experience, to feel, and then to respond, right? From a place of Hatha Yoga and, Mahamudra view, which is not to say, to turn around to the person and say, oh, well, you clearly don't understand. I was speaking, I am Mr. Objective Reality, today, and, you are Mr. or Mrs. or whomever, like, relative reality, and you have an obfuscated view and I have the clear view. Like, that's obviously not, skillful. But to understand that one may have hurt someone then requires that we show up to that, right? And repair. And then move on, right? That's, kind of, in a certain way of speaking. And I think we could apply this slightly without making it a big overall arching thing, because I think there are problems with this too. But like, you could say that the Mahamudra and Hatha Yoga practitioner is attempting to practice in the highest up power position. You're trying to up power, hold the higher power position than reality itself, right? And so in that way, you also have to hold the responsibility of all of the harm that can cause when applied unskillfully, or, in a way that is, straight out harmful. Right. So the same with these power dynamics, person with the, the up power position has it's much more responsibility than the person in the down power position. But that's not to say the person in the down power position doesn't hold any responsibility either. But if you're trying to practice, super practice, Mahamudra or Hatha Yoga, then you really ought to be able to recognize, the impact everywhere down from what you do. Right. Which is why then, in some cases, maybe it can be better sometimes to practice in solitude, right? If you get a group of people together and the 3 people are practicing Hatha Yoga and they're trying to do the highest possible practice that's non-dual, and then you have everybody else who's just brand new to it, that might not be the best balance, right? And so you send those Hatha Yoga practitioners to caves, or Mahamudra practitioners to the side of a river or charnel ground somewhere, and let them keep going. I think that this is the biggest problem I have with congregational Buddhism. Right? Just because we all move into the same space together doesn't mean everybody is practicing from the same view. And when everybody is not practicing from the same view, it's very unrealistic to expect that everybody's going to be able to necessarily practice together in the same way. And this, we can extrapolate even further, right? I mean, like, not just Dharma view, there's so many views, right? There's, the view of the cisgender white male versus the view of, people with other identities. Those don't always, aren't always, they don't always meet eye to eye in the same way, right? But with respect to, just keeping this within the context of like congregational spiritual practice, I personally feel that, yes, it can be great for people to come together to practice Mahamudra or Hatha Yoga. My experience of this kind of stuff, it is very kind of, intensely personal, because we're kind of trying to shred, the fabric of perception to rest into something so beyond everything, beyond conception itself. Right? And this is a deeply, kind of like scientific experiment, right? And so using this kind of scientific, experiment as a metaphor, then having the proper petri dish, right? Something, place that's controlled, right? Becomes, something we should take responsibility for. So maybe, things like that, if that's helpful. Yeah, good. Well, I have a hard exit. So I have a meeting with a museum. We're going to see what happens with my body when I die. I'm just kidding. Now this art exhibit thing we might be doing on Dark Retreat at the Rubin. So I won't be here next week. I'll be in a retreat. Eric Law is going to just hold an open Mahamudra practice session. So you can still come here, and then I'll be here, the following week. But for now, let's dedicate the merit to all beings, that all beings, no matter where they are in the entire universe, whether they have sentience or not, are able to recognize their mind as Mahamudra. And as Mahamudra practitioners, may we all be able to come together to be able to support one another in our practice, so that we're able to go deep and vast and beyond time and space, and to do it in such a way as to minimize harm, confusion, and regrettable impact on others. So take very, very good care of yourselves, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.